In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make this. A very simple door that you can walk up to, and you can see my line trace hits the door. I can interact with it, open it, walk through, and then close it. So I'm going to put the project files in the description for purchase, or you could follow the tutorial and see how to make it yourself. I'm just going to be looking from the top down on how this project actually works, and if you want to integrate it yourself, you can just look at the way I actually have things laid out. But this is a fully networked system, and it works in single player as well. It's lightweight and generally is just a really nice way to do it. So let's actually look at the inner workings. The first thing is the player. So we have our third person character, which I just stole from the third person character template, but I've added two things to it. I added a line trace system and I added an interact system. So the way the line trace system works is it gets the follow camera, and it kind of sets up its line trace by channel by getting the world's location and rotation. And then we have our endpoint distance, which is just how far it actually travels, which is just 300 units for now. And when it actually hits what it's looking at, so it traces from the camera outward. When it actually hits something, what it does is it gets that actor and it asks if it's interactable. And this is kind of what this node does. The way that kind of works is I have these objects down here, and this is the interactable, and this is the door. So the door is actually a subclass of the interactable, as you can see right here. The reason I have that set up is so if you wanted to integrate other things into your game for the character to interact with, it doesn't have to be a door. It could be a pickup, or it could be some kind of other interactable object like a lever or something. Anyway, the point is they all derive from the same subclass, so I can differentiate them from other actors or meshes or whatever else the line trace can possibly hit. So I make that cast, and if it is truly an interactable, then it will set it to the current interactable. If it's not an interactable, it actually invalidates the current interactable. And the reason I do that is for my next system, which is the interaction system. So when I press E on the keyboard, it'll open the door, or it will just interact. And it does this if the current interactable is valid. So if you're setting this to an invalid object, which is just nothing, then that's going to run false. But it'll run true if it's valid and it is set to what's being currently looked at on the tick for the line trace. So if you're looking at an interactable and you press E on your keyboard, it will run the interact server event, which calls the interacted dispatcher, which runs inside of all interactables. That's set up right here. So I have two things right now: my third person character and my interactable. We're not even worrying about the door yet. The interactable only has a few things changed. I have some networking stuff here, and I have my interacted dispatcher, which this dispatcher will always run on the server because I'm running the dispatcher right here. I'm just getting my interactable, which is a BP interactable object reference, and I just call the interacted dispatcher. So back to the networking really quick. The way I have this set up is I'm not net loading any of the objects on client. I am replicating the objects, and our net call distance squared is 1,000 Unreal units, or if you square that, I think it's 1,000,000. I don't know how many zeros are in here. I can't really count because it's a small number, but that's it for the interactable. Now, after making a child blueprint class, I've created the door blueprint, which works kind of like this. Make sure, and now actually I want to make sure that I'm addressing this before I get into anything else, make sure your door rotates on this origin, and in your 3D editor, make sure you set up that origin point as being the corner or the hinge of the door. And also, this is important, make sure if you're using the starter content door, which I'm using the starter content door, I don't think it comes with collisions. So if it doesn't come with collisions, I'm just going to delete this and pretend like we're starting from scratch. Just add a box simplified collision and make sure that the collision's set up. And that should work nicely. I've also set up this network zone out here, which actually spans 1,000 Unreal units, so you can visualize how far the network zone goes for actual rep notify. And then for the actual interaction system itself, when this door is actually interacted with, how do we tell it to rotate? Well, that's where this comes in. I have two modules. I have my networking and I have my animation. So this is just very, very simple animation for the door swing, and then this is where the actual networking logic happens. So when it starts, it's going to bind on interacted, and when that interacted dispatcher runs, and it knows that it has this interacted dispatcher, even though you can't see it down here, it knows it exists because inside of the BP interactable, it has that dispatcher right there. It knows that it can run this custom event, which will always run on the server, I don't have it set up to run on the server because you can't set up a delegate event to run on the server, but we know it will because it's called on the server in the third person character right here. And it just sets this variable to whatever value it's not. It's just toggling in between whether it's closed or whether it isn't closed. So the door is going to start closed. When this runs, it's going to set it to the opposite of closed, so then it will set it to open. And if it's open, it will set it to closed, and vice versa. This is just a rep notify variable, and when you create a rep notify variable, it creates an onRep function, which you can access by either double-clicking this or by double-clicking on the actual set. So you could double-click here and see that when it is closed, it's going to run closed. When it is not closed, it's going to run open. And the way that works is it just runs our animation. So this is our 2 events that run when it's opened or closed, and these events will actually rotate this mesh the same way that I rotate it in the viewport. The timeline looks like this. It's just a very smooth interpolation between point A, which is at 0, value 0, and point B, which is at about 0.35 seconds and is a value of 1. I linear interpolate between 0 degrees on the yaw and 90 degrees on the yaw for actually rotating the door all the way out or all the way in, and it just sets the relative rotation of the static mesh so your door can be at any rotation and will always rotate 90 degrees. Now, with all that set up, what I can do is run 2 clients on a dedicated server, and when I click play, I have 2 mannequins right here, and this guy can walk up to the door, press E and open it. I can close the door, and if it's open, I can switch over to my other client, and he can see that the door is open. The other client can close the door or open the door, walk through, close it, get stuck because he can't get back through because it's closed, and walk through again. And if he walks outside of the ring, which this is the ring right here, if I walk outside of the ring, the door will actually despawn and become irrelevant to the actual network. And if I walk back in, it will tell me that the door is open and will open the door for me so that I can see what the other clients see, which is it being open. So that's the project walkthrough. I just wanted to make a really quick tutorial for actually how to set up a networked door system like this that's easy enough where I can walk over to this thing, and if I'm pressing E when I am not looking at anything, it's not going to run. But if I get up right next to it and start pressing it, then it will open. And that's kind of how you would do some basic line trace based interaction, and it also makes for a really easy door or some kind of opening system where it triggers an event like this. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you check out the project in the description. Feel free to add a comment if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one.